everyone. Welcome back for 2 quick questions for Lent. We will start with Eli.
Is it the religious leaders who get Jesus killed or the Roman officials, or both? It seems like anyone in authority doesn't like Jesus. There are the practical implications of Jesus' crucifixion, but then the spiritual implications. And the reality is that we are the ones who got Jesus killed. It says in the Bible that Jesus gave himself up as a ransom for many, meaning that Jesus gave up his life, not because anyone else took it from him, but because he was the perfect sacrifice that would wash away, cleanse all of the sins of all of humanity when we put our faith in him. So really, it's us.
In Luke 19, there's a story that Jesus tells. Luke includes this detail. He told a story to correct the impression that the kingdom of God would begin right away. He's on his way to Jerusalem. It's going to be the triumphal entry, Palm Sunday, Holy Week, all that good stuff. And so maybe people are thinking this is when Jesus is going to take over. And Jesus tells a story about investing what's been given to you and investing it in a way that it grows over time. And so part of the point Jesus is trying to make here is that the kingdom of God is something that it works slowly. It works best when it works slowly and patiently and goes out, spreads to all people.
Yeah. In Luke 19, Jesus clears the temple. This seems destructive, and how can Jesus destroy stuff? We thought he was perfect. I would call this righteous anger, and Jesus is not okay with things getting in the way between our worship of God. And so these merchants were selling things, making a profit, really high markup value for things that everybody would have needed at the temple. And Jesus said, this is coming between you and the worship of God, and I'm not okay with it.
Samuel appoints his sons as judges after him. Doesn't God pick the judges? And this leads to Israel asking for a king. Samuel is a fascinating character, and I'm excited we're getting to that place where we get to study Samuel and Saul and David and Solomon and this progression of really going from bad to worse through this lineage. Because when we fail to surrender to God's will over our lives, some pretty messy things can happen. And I think that's what we see in Samuel's life. He gets a lot of things right, but he's human. You know, all these characters in the Bible are human. And they are meant to show us not the perfect way to live, only Jesus shows us that. They show us all of their flaws as well. And I think when Samuel struggles to, continue to faithfully follow God's will in ways that God would honor, we see some pretty messy things show up.
There is a couple in Samuel named Hannah and Elkanah, and they have a son named Samuel. They give him to Eli the priest to work there, to serve there. He ends up being called by God. Is that a common thing? Do people just give up their children to serve in the temple? One of the things you see as you're reading through the early part of the Old Testament is this idea of the dedication of the first, whether it's the first fruit or the first of your crop or a harvest or first children. Think of the details around Jesus. It's important that he is Mary's firstborn son. She gave birth to her firstborn. There's something in that culture around the firstborn son and the idea of offering or dedicating it to the Lord that is impactful. It doesn't happen often that they would actually give their child away, but occasionally it did happen.
In 1 Samuel 3, it begins by telling us that messages and visions from the Lord were rare. Why did this happen? What has happened between previous to this point and now? Well, if you're reading right before this in 1 Samuel, Eli's sons aren't listening to God. They're not following. They don't want to listen. And so I wonder if God was speaking or had visions and people just didn't care to listen. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.